Okay, here we are. It's Thursday, November 29th, day 4 of the UN bribery trial, U.S. versus Patrick Ho and the China Energy Fund Committee. We've been covering it every day, and we're heading there today, hoping to see the cross-examination of Sheikh Gadio, who we once questioned inside the UN when he was the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation envoy on CAR, the Central African Republic. You see, these sleazy wheeling and dealing and arms deals to dictators are all done at the UN under the cover of high-minding ideals like sustainable development and the Central African Republic. And Antonio Guterres is the king of this type of hypocrisy. He talks about freedom of the press, throws the press in the street. He talks about transparency and won't even say where he goes. Well, we've asked him this morning, how can it be that for more than a year he's failed to do any audit of a Chinese NGO shown to be selling tanks and drones and paying bribes? Yesterday, Gadio described the blow-up situation in which $2 million of cash in gift boxes was presented to Idris Deby in N'Djamena, Chad. Now, according to him, and most of the press has reported this uncritically, Deby is a strong anti-corruption guy. I call BS. He's a coup leader. He's a coup leader. I actually was in N'Djamena before Antonio Guterres saw fit to throw inner-city press out of the UN. I accompanied and covered a Security Council trip to N'Djamena, Chad. The ambassador of Libya said this country has gotten worse over the last 20 years. Deby, he didn't say this. I say this. Where did the money go? There was a Chad-Cameroon pipeline. Anyone remember that? Remember that? Yeah, very anti-corruption. He's a Pan-Africanist, according to Gadio. He's citing Marcus Garvey and William Du Bois. I don't know. Gadio's an interesting character, but he pretty much put in writing that he was expecting bribery money while foreign minister of Senegal for the switch from Taiwan to China. So it's a bit hard to think that his testimony is going to be taken at face value. Okay, we're going in. That's where it stands. Day 4. As the UN is shown to be entirely corrupt and Antonio Guterres entirely irresponsible. Impeachment? To be continued. Okay, here we are. It's midday of the U.S. versus Patrick Ho trial. Gadio has been on the stand all day. He began at 10 o'clock, still under the direct examination of the prosecution. He admitted a variety of things, including his failure to pay taxes on the $400,000 that was paid by Mr. Patrick Ho and CEFC to him, and said that part of his non-prosecution agreement involves making that right. He filed his taxes jointly with his wife, who is a UN official. So, once again, UN. But the most interesting thing came still on direct examination when he described a meeting between Deby, Ho, and Mr. Zhang, that Mr. Deby, the president of Chad, wanted to be entirely confidential, as small a group as possible. And he claimed this was because of national security information that he didn't want to disclose, but it had something to do with the war situation, the war zone. He mentioned Boko Haram. And in the meeting, the discussion was not just hypothetical. The discussion was of weapons. And the reality is that CEFC has been described in the trial as closely aligned with the Defense Committee of the People's Republic of China. And so you basically have a UN-accredited NGO as part of this whole hoopla in the Security Council about Boko Haram and G5 Sahel. And then you have a sleazy oil company using a UN NGO to try to market weapons to a 30-year president who took power by force. Yes, Antonio Guterres, this is your UN. This is the organization. I've got my hat on because it's cold out here. This is the organization which Antonio Guterres is running and refuses to audit the use of UN premises and UN-accredited NGOs to sell weapons to dictators, ostensibly for Boko Haram. But do you know that there are opponents in Chad? Do you know that Chad has fighting an internal opposition? Now, as the cross-examination by Mr. Kim began, we came to learn that CEFC lost interest in the deal. In fact, Gadio was pleading with them to make it happen because he wanted a 1% commission. He wanted a $500,000. I'm saying this like I'm just following the trial as it is. I think, well, it doesn't matter what I think. I'm just telling you what happens is that Gadio was the one from a certain point that was pitching the deal. Ho didn't even talk to him anymore. Ho said, I've moved on to other projects, talked to Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang was too busy. He was the number 2 of CEFC based out in Beijing. So he said, talk to Dr. Liu. Everyone's a doctor in this case, by the way. It's like a hospital. It's like an episode of ER. Gadio was left claiming, he said in an email, that Debbie was calling him directly. But when asked on cross-examination by Mr. Kim, he said, oh, no, he really meant the chief of staff. Now, we're going to write a story about this, including the chief of staff's names and everything else. But this is the key. Here are some key elements. What's the UN's knowledge of this tax evasion on a joint tax return? Number 2, the offer was of the Chad-Cameroon pipeline. Mr. Gadio was telling CEFC that they should pay him $500,000 because he was giving him a piece of Cameroon. This guy Gadio was selling Cameroon too, just like Antonio Guterres. Okay, this case will be continued in the afternoon. Okay, and we're back, heading back in. UN bribery trial, U.S. versus Patrick Ho and the China Energy Fund Committee. Day 4. On the stand. Excuse me, it's a little chilly out here. On the stand, Mr. Sheikh Gadio, former foreign minister of Senegal, a man who reaffirmed only today that he wants to run for president of his country. There's some problems, of course. He pretty much stated in writing that he had expected a Chinese bribe for flipping from Taiwan. I don't know. He had a bank account closed in Dubai for inability to show where the money came from. But hope springs eternal. IPS, by the way, doesn't stand for Institute of Peace and Security. It stands for Institute of Pan-African Studies. Sheikh Gadio. So the cross will begin at 2:15. Hopefully we can get in there on time. Upstairs. But the way this thing makes the UN, it's terrible. It's terrible. The UN accredited NGO, Mr. Patrick Ho, highly respected, giving $1 million grants to DESA, posing with many current UN officials, was offering weapons off the table and under the books, much like the $2 million of cash, to longtime Chadian dictator Idris Deby. For what use, you might ask? Did this comply with the Arms Control Treaty? Did he do due diligence? I don't think so. I think UN-accredited NGOs selling weapons and Antonio Guterres ostensibly caring, doing no audit, refusing to audit, and instead targeting, roughing up, and throwing out the press that asked about it makes Antonio Guterres a dictator. But that's just me. We're going in. Sir Gadio, how do you think it went? How do you think it went today? And are you still running for president of Senegal? Uh-oh. Come on, guys. Okay, this is not going to be very good campaign footage. This is the beginning of the Sheikh Gadio presidential run. I don't mean to laugh. I was inside the UN when he was presented as a man absolutely committed to the Central African Republic. Uh-oh. Wait a second. Wait a moment. There was the laying on of hands against a Hong Kong photographer. Oh. Wait a second. This is not the way you run for president. Attacking photographers is not the way. Maybe, I mean, if Alec Baldwin can do it, why not Sheikh Gadio? We have a New York moment. Sheikh Gadio. That's Gadio. Not for use in a campaign footage. I actually I was a reporter at the UN when you were with the OIC on Central African Republic. I remember asking you a question. Yeah, I was there. I'm sorry. Okay? Great. Yeah, Matthew Lee, in the same dress. All right? Thanks a lot.
Good night, everyone.
Have you go back to the country? I will get back to you, okay? See, there's no police, nothing.
Okay, great. See you. All right.
If you go back to see your family, I think it's good. You have to stay in America.
You still stay in New York?
You see, I tell you that.
Was that Abdullahi Wad? Was the president at the time, right? Wad. Okay.
I just try so hard, but he's just not talking.
I'll end this one here. And so there he goes. Mr. Sheikh Gadio has taken off. Will he still run for president? Unknown. To be continued.